Okay, hi, and welcome back to Spirit Lounge. I hope you guys are doing well. And to the next installment of the Upanisads, we're steaming through the last third or quarter now of the book. And we're going to go on to the next one, which is not a bad length. It's quite interesting, this one, so hope you enjoy it. So let's bring this onto the screen before we go any further. This one is the Mundaka Upanisad. And again, apologise to anyone who does come onto the chat, which is very seldom because I do these impromptu, really. I don't see the chats until I've actually finished the video and closed off this live session, and it cuts off the chat, so I'm able to reply to anybody. So apologise for that. I'll actually put the chat box on the top here, and then maybe I'll be able to see things coming in that way. Okay. Nevertheless, let's continue. Okay, the Upanisads again, we've gone through many times. It's 1200 to 400 BC. Seers and sages and ascetics went on to the quietly in peacefully meditative practice in forests and derived the Upanisads as mystical writings as the fifth writing after the four main Vedas, which are listed there. The Mundaka Upanisad is connected to the Atharva Veda. So all of these Upanisads have links or connections to one or more of the Vedas because they either concentrate on rituals or practice or symbolism or prayers or chants or sacrifices and so on and so forth, which are described within the Vedas themselves. This talks about higher knowledge, lower knowledge, what Supreme Brahman is, Om, and the empirical world. It actually does speak to this quite distinctly, so hope you find this interesting. Okay, and it starts the tradition of Brahma knowledge. Okay, Brahma arose first among gods. So, from my perspective, in the comment I've made here, there is only one. There is only the divine grace. All of the gods and deities, demigods, are abstractions that we've created. There's only the one, the divine, and we need to only reach that. We need to supersede all these other manifestations that we've created, and these texts do suggest that as well, and it'll come later on. And was the maker of the universe, a protector of the world. He taught the knowledge of Brahman and the foundation of it to Atharva, his eldest son. And so this could be the manifestation of Hiranyagarbha's universal soul, the creator of the universe. This could be what the foundation he's teaching. And Socrates, a statement from Socrates which is pulled out here was, a life without philosophy is not livable by man. I found this interesting because this is talking about really not necessarily philosophy, just a life where one does not contemplate anything beyond the physical self, the desires, the attachments that one has that keep one here and reincarnating here. This is a life that doesn't have contemplative thought, which is what I would discern here as being philosophy. Okay, Atharvan, and this talks about this. The eldest son then told Angiras, and he then taught Satyavaha, and so another individual, Sanaka, approached Atharva and asked, "Through what being was this known? Who taught you?" And then he goes on to speak. Atharva goes on to speak. The two kinds of knowledge. He said, there are two kinds of knowledge. Two kinds of knowledge are to be known, higher as well as lower. The lower is the Rig Veda, which is comprised of the Rig Veda, the Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva Veda. These are the four Vedas. The higher is that by which the undecaying is apprehended. I totally agree with this. What this is talking about, it's not talking lower knowledge, i.e., desire-driven material attachment aspects of ourselves. This is talking about lower ascended transcendental knowledge through scripture. And as I've repeated many times through this series and also the Nagamadi series, the way you will achieve the transcendental nature of moksha towards the divine grace itself, which is what the frequency we're moving towards, is within contemplative meditation and going and attaching and elevating the inner spirit outwardly. This is your internal church. This is the journey of the self. will one day have to leave Scripture behind, and this is the church and the temple in which one will have to inwardly recede. And that's what this is saying. The lower is the Scripture, is the text, the practice, the rituals, the prayer, the meditation, the sacrifices, and so on and so forth. The higher is apprehended through the undecaying principle within. So I've said I agree, at some point we must move away from Scripture, from ritual sacrifice, and age down past practices and recede into our divine light within. From there, the higher knowledge ascends into us, feeling like it is an outward descent inwards, because it explores outwards. We feel that it's coming externally and going inwards, but it's emitting outwards. So this is true. This passage and my comment, I absolutely agree with, and I found it really interesting. Okay, and he goes on to speak, the imperishable source of things unperceivable, that which is ungraspable and without family, without caste. Caste is a human form, a human created thing. Make no doubt about that. Sight, hearing, hands, feet is eternal, it's all pervading, is subtle, which the wise perceive as the source of beings. It is the undescribable absolute Brahman, is also the source of beings. From the imperishable arises here the universe. And it suggested the world is illusionary and is also the source, is illusionary appearance of Brahman. Brahman is the sole cause and there is no second. I agree with this. The world is illusionary but is also real as within its experience. But is it our origination? Is the universe our origination? No, it is not. It is illusionary. It is a theatre in which we enter and where we become lost, in which we now need to transcend out of. Hence, all the teachings are saying this and asking us to do this. In the Nagamadi, it's autogenes. In the Vedas, it's called moksha. They mean the same things: transcending beyond the material and the physical incarnating plane. And that's what I agree with. That I agree with this without reservation. The contemplative power is energy by which the world is produced. This is talking about contemplative. It's thought. And I've mentioned many times that energy is transmuted into matter or intent, and through intention and free will, through thought. Thought transmutes everything from its original form. Thought is the originating, sprouting force that transmutes energy, and thus using the forces of creation, preservation, and transformation, and also free will, energy, intention, karma, and those forces as well to transmute matter, and it thinks for itself. Everything's conscious, remember. Contemplative power is the energy by which the world is produced. Food, which is spirit and knowledge. Life, mind. Reals, which is called the earth, water, fire, wind, and space. The worlds, rituals, and immortality. These are the things. Remember, the Vedas bring everything into as manifestations of source, or expressions of source of divine grace. Even our mouth, ears, nose, our fingers, our hands, our limbs, the universe itself, the cosmic bodies above us, the material plane, the environmental aspects are all regarded as abstractions or derivatives of the divine, and also through which we understand it, the whole broken down in pieces. And hence it refers to it many, many times. That's why you'll see a lot of this in the age-old texts of this age, 1200 to 400. You'll see a lot of this kind of representation to how it's explained and how things are, how they're created into derivatives to help us help the teller, the teacher, pass on what is to be understood. Okay, Brahma is regarded as a personal god, is self-conscious and contemplative. It's the first manifested principle. He who is all-knowing and all-wise, from him born this Brahma. So this could also be regarded as Hiranyagarbha. For me, it's simply the divine grace who is without beginning and end. Remember, Hiranyagarbha for me is just a manifestation. We created this to as a creator of the universe. There has to be something that a god or a deity or a demigod we create to represent something as the creator of something, when in fact everything comes from the divine all. Everything. We don't need to put demigods and deities in between. We don't need to put angels in between. We don't need to put abstractions in between. If the passage for us to achieve is to the divine grace itself, why do we not just focus on that as our ultimate end only? It's a question I ask you all to consider. Okay, through which creation takes place. It's an indivisible idea. It's a dual form, word and meaning. So this is the comment from the author, talking about from which Brahma is from, the source from which creation takes place. It's an indivisible idea, i.e., it's from the one. Ceremonial religion. This talks about ritual and practice a lot. This truth the sages saw. Spread forth in the three Vedas. So when the sages saw this initially, they were in the Treta era. Remember the yugas? This is talking about the yuga cycle, the various cycles of the yugas, the 26,000 year cycle that goes round and round and round. I will be doing a video on the yugas at some point. I was going to do it sometime in the past, but I actually forgot. But it's in my book. But I will be doing a video to explain the yugas and its association with all the other cycles within Christianity, the Bronze Ages and so forth. They're all linked. But this is the Treta Yuga, which apparently have three Vedas in that Yuga. Now that will probably be the Rig Veda, the Yajur and the Sama Veda, which were the three preceding ones. The Atharva Veda came afterwards. Your path to the world of good deeds, the good world of good deeds, is the divine realm of the divine grace. Throw with faith his oblations. These are offerings. Satapatha Brahmana commentary states that the gods and the demons were both children of Prajapati. Prajapati being the creation of Hiranyagarbha, and who was the lord of the created realm, i.e. creation in itself. And it says that the gods and demons were both devoid of spiritual wisdom, and they performed these the Rig, Yajur, and Sama Veda rituals, practices. The demons performed those rites as external things, and the gods performed them as inward self things, and therefore they became more ascended. And it's important. This is basically saying know how to perform rituals correctly and why, if one is going to. And that's my comment there. If one has a leaning towards these things, do them, but understand why you're doing them, and do them correctly, so that they produce the thing that you're seeking from them. Not just a virtuous, self-righteous sort of feel-good act, because then nothing really derives of things like that. Not much, if they're not really understood. Okay. Next comment. Radiant offerings invite him with words. These are chants and prayers. Come, this is your holy world of Brahma, won through good deeds. Guru Vasitha tells Prince Rama, this is in the Ramayana, it's a Sanskrit epic, and he tells Prince Rama in the conversation, ritual is by itself not enough. And this also states what we were just talking about. To just perform, and it's also what Mahanji states. The quote I repeat numerous times after every video. Ritual itself, and practice itself, and symbolism itself, and sacrifice itself, and all these things that we do, if we do not understand them, they have little purpose. But also by themselves, without the next step of ritual of contemplative practice, which is we're going to go into further in this video, it is not enough. It definitely isn't. The second stage to what we're trying to do, which is the combination of the Om, and this will make sense later, is that contemplative passage within. Okay, and the Ramayana was an epic where Prince Rama was rescuing his wife Sita for the clutches of Ravana with the army of monkeys, Hanuman and so forth. If you're familiar with some of those deities. Okay, we continue with the Vedas, with the Upanisads. Deluded by sacrifice, austerity, almsgiving, pilgrimage and worship of gods, men pass many years in misery. This is talking about ritual only. Who are intent on duties of their own, those who are intent on duties of their own caste do not know the Supreme. They go to ruin with their pride. In the midst of ignorance, wise men, wise in their own esteem, thinking themselves learned. Like blind men, they are immature. They perform ritual but do not understand because of attachment. They sink down when their words are exhausted. These deluded men do not know any other good. Having enjoyed in the high place of heaven won by good deeds, enter again this world or a lower one. This is talking about those who deem themselves of a caste above everyone else. And then they go on to perform ritual after ritual after ritual after ritual, not knowing why. Do not proceed onto the real transcendent path. And they do this because of their own ignorance and their own pride in their own caste. And for them, after their esteem and their own pride is exhausted, they find themselves reincarnating and having not really achieved that which they think they are achieving. Those who practice austerity, i.e. simple living, and faith in the forest. Now, it also always talks about forests in the Vedas. This is because in those times, 1200 to 400 BCE, remember, you were given the stage of life. You are young, you are a young adult, you're a child, you grow up, you marry, and then you have children, you have offspring, then you raise your offspring. Once you've raised your family, the third stage was actually to leave all things behind, denounce the material world and leave your wife and go into the forest as an ascetic and achieve the transcendental nature of spirit there. Hence the forest. It's part of the time and the age of when the Vedas were written. Is also very prominent within the Upanisads themselves and also the Vedas, you'll find. They are tranquil knowers and depart freed from sin. Through the door of the sun dwells the immortal person. The doors, remember the sun, the light, it's always referring to that which is bright in the sky, the nurturer of life. And this is a comment from the book as well, not from the Upanisads. Tradition states spiritual life in India has solitary meditation. This is very true. If you go through India, you'll still find many traveling ascetics, gurus, preachers, people a bit bordering on the occult and also practice with red eyes. You'll see them wandering around India all the time, and also those pretending to, just asking for money also. But solitary meditation still is practiced in many places in India, and it's as one is its essential stages. This is still the case in modern times. It has been the cherished ambition and pursuit of lonely ascetics. It is assumed that those who are distracted by the cares and encumbered by the possessions of the world find it hard to secure the spiritual ends. This is absolutely true. Those emancipated from these are free to devote themselves to the highest aim. I must just say, there's part of me, mostly part of you guys, who would lean towards an ascetic life. I certainly would, but I think in this life that is not the case, although I will be hopefully travelling to places to meet people who have chosen an ascetic life. But in these days, the ascetic lives are generally in temples and monasteries and places like that. Instead of travelling ascetics, we tend to find those now, those who've chosen ascetic life, to be monasteries and churches and temples in mountaintops, hiding away, or rather moving their lives in those places rather than travelling around. They go to those places in solitude there. Okay, the next passage was Brahma knowledge to be sought from a teacher. Remember, the Vedas constantly ask and request that you start your passage with a teacher. I suggest, if that's what one leans to do even now, do so, but do not remain with a teacher. The passage will always end with thyself in thy own internal church and thy own passage to contemplative, meditative, prayerful practice towards the divine grace from within yourself. That will always be the end state, remember. Having scrutinized the worlds, a Brahman arrived at non-attachment. The world that is not made is not won by what is done. Sake of knowledge, let him approach. A teacher who is learned, established in Brahman, who has approached. whose mind is tranquil, has attained peace, attained peace rather. Let the knowing, the teacher, teach in its very truth about Brahma, the imperishable one. Okay, the doctrine of Brahman, Atman. Now the Brahman and Atman is one of the same thing. It's the self and the infinite absolute consciousness. The Atman is the true self, and the Brahman being the infinite absolute consciousness. They are actually intertwined and are actually one. There is a distinction made in some places in the Upanisads, in the Vedas, but there doesn't need to be. It is just one. The self and the consciousness are one within us. But we could continue. It does actually suggest that we can take it either way depending on your own leaning. Okay, this is the truth. Many kinds of beings issue forth, form the immutable, and they return thither. In other words, they return back to that place. Thither too, divine, formless in the person, without this is talking about the immutable self, our absolute consciousness, is formless in the person, is without and within, internal and external, is pure and higher. From him are born life, mind, sense organs, ether, air, light, water and earth. So he's saying the whole creation is traced to the personal Lord Ishvara, which is the God, if you like, which is supposed to be omnipresent, omniscient, incorporeal and independent, and the independent creator of the universe. This is the thing that's beyond the Brahma itself, which is really the same thing. His eyes, and so this is from the Upanisads, his eyes are the sun and the moon. The regions of space are the ears. Speech revealed is in the Vedas. Air is his life, which is the breath. Heart is the world, feet the earth. He is the self of all beings. So this is abstracting the personal Brahma, the personal self, the personal Atman, the personal Ishvara, the God, to represent that which the ascetics were seeing around them as being expressions of the divine, and also aspects of us, physical selves. Okay, for him, he is the self of all beings. From him, fire, whose fuel is the sun, moon the rain, herbs the earth, male fire pours seed in the female, creatures are produced from the person. From him come forth the 7 life breaths. Now what are the 7 life breaths? You'll notice here, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, and a mouth. So again, abstractions of the physical body. This is repeated many, many times. And 7 flames, these are oblations thrown into the fire. 7 oblations, 7 worlds. From him, the seas, mountains, rivers, herbs, elements, inner soul is upheld. The person himself is all this. In other words, the absolute is all things. It is an expression of all things, and everything that is perceived by the ascetics is then representations of the absolute, and that's what these passages and these repeated statements in the Upanisads, and no doubt the Vedas, repeat over and over again, and that's why. Okay, the Supreme Brahman, moving in the secret place of the heart, centered all this which moves, being and non-being, highest beyond the reach of man's understanding. It is luminous, subtler than all subtle. That is the imperishable Brahman. It is life, speech, mind. This is to be known. Know that. The great weapon of the Upanisads. Sharpened by meditation. This is what we were saying. Sharpened by meditation is the stage beyond scripture. Silence and peace and tranquility. Contemplate meditation. Mind in the contemplation of that. Om is the bow. Brahman is the target. He whom the sky, earth, into space are woven. Know him alone as the one self. Dismiss other utterances. Meditate on Om as the self. May you be successful in crossing over to the farthest shore of darkness. Remember the river we spoke about, we say it many times. The stones, many stones crossing the river. Each stone represents something different for each individual on our own personal journey to our own personal God, which is the expression of the divine on the other side. The darkness on this side is just our loss. The other side is light, that being awakened, enlightenment, transcendent knowledge and knowing, moving beyond the universal, beyond the human realm at the very least. This is the passage we're trying to seek across the river. Each stone is a different thing for different people. Your stone will be different to another person's stone. The same stone, but a different meaning to that stone for the individual. However many you need will be however many are across that are presented before you to get to the other side. And this also means incarnative lives. The self-luminous light of the world. Highest golden sheath is Brahman without stain. It is the light of lights. Sun shines not there, nor moon and stars. Everything shines only after that shining light. It is the front, the behind. Brahma indeed is this universe. I think that passage is self-explanatory. Okay, recognition of the Lord of compassion. Two birds are companions. They cling to the same tree. One eats and the other looks on. United. On the same tree, a person is immersed, is deluded on account of his helplessness. When he sees the Lord, he becomes freed. So in other words, another seeks and eats the food of knowing and spirit, and while another watches and therefore seems helpless. Once he starts eating the food, which is knowledge and spirit, then when he sees the Lord, he becomes freed. When a seer sees the Creator, the Lord, the person is always talking about the internal Atman, the self, the Brahma, absolute Brahma, which is the consciousness. All the same thing. Source of Brahman. He attains supreme equality with the Lord. Not quite. I didn't like that statement. We don't achieve supreme equality with the divine. We are not. We are expressions of it. What we are trying to achieve is a likeness in terms of elevating towards the divine frequency closer and closer. We'll never have equality to it in the journey towards it. Once we've fulfilled the absolute journey, which is way beyond humanness, and other states of dimensional frequency that we have to pass through, we enter into the realm of the divine and we merge into that peaceful, loving silence that I've described many times. And this also is described in this particular Upanisad as well, and we'll go into that. Okay. Life that shines forth in all beings. The wise man does not talk of anything else. He is delighted in the self. And this comment from the book says, meditation conducive to a knowledge of Brahman, which it is. This is talking about meditative contemplative practice beyond scripture. The soul frees itself from all attachments into stillness of the self without seeking for reward. Without stillness of the self, liberated consciousness, deep, unmoved, liberated consciousness is into deep, unmoved repose at the center, and perpetual creativity are his features. Okay, and to the Upanishads. This self within the body is attainable by truth and austerity, simplifying life, giving up of things unnecessary. Right knowledge being knowledge towards grace, the lower and higher knowledge rather. Constant practice of chastity. Now, this is not true. We don't need to be giving up procreation. I don't agree with this at all. I never have. What you will find, forced chastity is temporal and will lead to frustration and sometimes perversion. We've already seen this in many, many religious institutions. It's control, but you don't even need to control it artificially. You will find that if you once one is progressing to a spiritual nature, more and more and more, physical desires or sexual desires become quietened naturally, stilled naturally, because you're seeking greater things. Your vibration in frequency has moved up beyond the lower chakras, You're still attached to them and grounded, but your focus, your leanings, your tendencies which you're changing, your repeating paradigms are moving beyond the rudimentary focus of your lower chakras. It's moving up into the higher chakra frequencies, therefore opening yourself to more transcendental nature of self. This will automatically, naturally recede the desire self. There's no need for forced chastity. This does not work and actually is not a requirement. Control over our desires and awareness of them is what's needed. But as I said, the passage of transcendence will temper that constantly anyway, if you're truly on the path, that is. Truth alone conquers. By truth is laid out the path by which the sages who have their desires fulfilled travel. The supreme abode is divine. Its unthinkable form is near at hand, not grasped by the eye, nor speech, sense organs, or austerity. It's when one's intellectual nature is purified by the light of knowledge, then alone he, by meditation, sees him. This is what I've just said. The intellectual nature is purified. This is also changing our paradigms of behavior, our tendencies of behavior, our repetition and our nature, which is the reason why we're still here. This is purified.